Reece finally sauntered in around 4:30. Typical, he couldn't resist making things as inconvenient as possible for me. He slid into a seat and leered at me. "Ah, babe, did you put on that cute little outfit just for me?" I took a sip of my milkshake and drawled, "Oh, look. It's Spider Boy." He gave me an exasperated look but kept going. "So, Miss Phelps, your assignment, whether you like it or not, is to infiltrate your mom's office and deliver me the minutes from this Tuesday's school board meeting before they're sent to the notary." I stopped sucking on my milkshake and stared at him. "What do you want with the school board minutes?" "I've been to those meetings, and when they're not busy trying to tear each other apart, they're so boring they could put an accountant to sleep." He flashed me a Cheshire cat grin and said, "I've got an uncle who's looking to invest in sports equipment. For different companies are competing for the contract to supply uniforms and gear for the school district. If he knows which one's going to win before the official announcement, he can invest early and make a killing while the prices are low. If I get him that info, he might even hand over the keys to his '84 Jaguar when I turn 16. So, insider trading. Sleazy enough for Reece, but I had a feeling there was more to it. "All right, Reece, I'll get you a copy." "No, not a copy. The original. Before it's sent to the notary." Now I knew he was up to something shady. But I decided to play innocent. "Okay, the original. But that's it. You burn the negatives, and you leave me and my friends alone. No more tricks, no more anonymous notes, no sly comments. Nothing. Got it?" He looked evasive. "We'll make a formal agreement when you hand over the minutes." Here's where I knew I had to be careful. Lying was bad karma, but breaking a formal oath? That was a disaster in the making. When I got home, I was exhausted. And, of course, still had homework and dinner to deal with. I slumped onto the couch, and Clyde came over, resting his head on my lap, looking up at me with those soulful eyes. I scratched his head. "Sorry, Clyde, but there's no way I'm telling you about my problems. You'll just tell Dad, and I don't need that right now." Clyde sighed and shut his eyes, content to just be there without anyone giving me grief. I was at the family computer, doing research. Well, I wasn't lying, it just wasn't for school, when the next bomb dropped. Trey came up, grinning like a little gremlin. He stood there, waiting for me to notice. I shot him a frosty glare and said, "No, I don't want to play Batman. Every time you play the Joker, you use it as an excuse to break things and blame me." He kept grinning. "Oh, would you rather play Batgirl then?" Before I knew it, Trey was hanging from his shirt collar, his feet dangling. I snarled at him, and what exactly does that mean? The little rat kept his cool. "You hit me, and I'll tell Mom you've been dressing up as a girl. You can't prove anything, you little twerp. I know where you keep your girly clothes, and if Mom asks, you can't lie to her. If I tell, you're totally screwed. And what exactly do you want for your silence, oh vertically challenged evil mastermind?" "Well, first, do my homework." "And that's it?" "For now." Great, even my little brother is jumping on the bully Dan bandwagon. I wonder if Dan Maxim ever has days like this. It took a bit, but I used Dad's Codebreaker software to access the local phone company logs. Sure enough, the Aubreys had 3 phone lines, one of which was for the special internet rate. I then hacked into their computer and checked the user history. What did I find? Cyberporn, Hollywood gossip, CNN, stock reports, lotto numbers, and then, public school scandals? What the hell? I looked up the site, called State Education Roundup, Focus on Public School Corruption. This didn't sound good. The first article was about a case in Alabama titled, "School Board Minutes Changed to OK Theft." So, Reece planned to mess with the minutes and either add or remove something. But why? He couldn't possibly get his hands on any of the funds. Maybe his uncle was actually running the sporting goods company, and he wanted to arrange things so his uncle would make a huge profit. But something didn't add up. He only mentioned his uncle might hand over the Jaguar. No, it wasn't about money. It was about making someone else look guilty. He didn't have to steal anything, he just had to make it look like someone else did. Like Mom, or Ms. Sorensen, or Coach Robbins. Even if they noticed the changes later, he could spin it as a cover-up. He could hold this over our heads forever, and the best part? There would be no backlash like there would be if those photos of me got out. This was exactly what Reece would do. Okay, Reece, you've set your trap. Now all I have to do is wait for you to hang yourself. Wednesday came, as it always does. I sidled up to Reece at the urinal and muttered, Burger King. 4 o'clock. Be there on time, this time. At 4 p.m., I was at the Burger King, dressed in my striped jersey and jumper. Why waste anything new on Reece? He strolled in and plopped himself down. All right, babe, where's the stuff? I shot him an unimpressed look. I'm not handing anything over until we've got the formal declarations first. And frankly, I don't think a fast food joint is the best place for that sort of exchange. People listen, you know? Right. How about Kissing Rock in Cooperswood, at 5? I barely nodded in agreement. Then, just in case he thought I was going along with some reputation play, I shot up from my seat, yelled, You creep, and tossed the last of my milkshake right in his face before storming out the door. By the time I got to Kissing Rock, it was just after 5. I'd switched back to my guy mode, since Reece's choice of location had me suspicious. He looked a little thrown by the change. Hey, why'd you switch? I grinned and gave him a go-do-yourself look. I wouldn't put it past you to go back and tell your buddies you were meeting a cute blonde at Kissing Rock to, wink, wink, conduct a little business. Now, if anyone asks you if you met a girl here, well, good luck with that. Besides, if you've got your friends lurking in the woods, spying on me, your reputation is gonna take a bigger hit than mine. Reece chewed on that for a moment. He then held out his hand. Okay, give me the minutes. I shook my finger at him. First, the formal declarations, with the oaths. Then we exchange goods. What exchange? You didn't bring the roll of film? Why would I do something stupid like that? I'm leaving. I started to turn. Hey! Where are you going? If you're not gonna hand over the film, then why should I give you anything? And I'd be an idiot to bring the film here where you could ruin it with witchfire, right? I hadn't thought of that. So, now what? I'm not handing anything over based on your word alone, and you're not risking your ace in the hole. What do we do now? What if I swear on my name, my family, my heart, my breath, that I'll destroy the film as soon as I get home? Only if you swear right now that you haven't developed the film and made no copies of it. He sighed, placed his hands over his heart, and recited, I swear, by my name, Reece Aubrey, by my family name of Aubrey, by my mother Miriam Lily Cosgrove Aubrey, by my heart and my breath, that I have not developed the film and made no copies of it. Thereof? Reece was getting a little full of himself. Good. Now swear by the ones that you'll destroy the film as soon as I hand you this envelope. Only if you swear by the rivers that what's in the envelope is the original minutes of the Millbridge District School Board meeting from last Tuesday, and that you haven't altered them. The rivers was a serious oath. I nodded, tucked the envelope under my arm, folded my hands, and recited, I, Ethan Jesse Winters, swear by the rivers that flow from the stars, from the skies, from the winds, from the earth, from under the earth, from the blood, from my heart, my mind, my dreams, and my soul, that flow into the world, through the world, and into the next world. I swear by these sacred rivers that the envelope I have for Reece Aubrey contains the exact original minutes of the Millbridge District School Board meeting from last Tuesday, and that I have added nothing to, or taken nothing from, those minutes. Reece nodded, satisfied. He resumed his oath-taking posture and declared, I, Reece Aubrey, swear by the one sun, the one sky, the one sea, the one land, the one tree, and the one blood, that I will destroy the film of Ethan Jesse Winters as soon as I reach my home, and I will make no copies before I destroy it. He looked at me, and I could see the gears turning in his mind, figuring out how to screw me over, even with those oaths. But those oaths wouldn't stop him from pulling his tricks. I handed him the envelope. Open it. Why? I trust you. I grinned. Open it. Behind my back, I strained to form a ball of inconvenient in one hand. Curious, Reece opened the manila envelope. Inside, there was a smaller white envelope. He pulled it out, and a small slip of paper slipped from it. He glanced at the white envelope. It had Reece Aubrey written on it. He bent down to pick up the slip of paper, which was covered in strange runes, written in an unusual brown ink. Before he could make sense of the runes, I launched the ball of witchfire at the slip of paper. Normally, inconvenient doesn't burn things, but certain alchemical solutions can ignite when hit by fool's fire. The paper had been soaked in such a solution. It flared up like a torch, burning Reece's fingers. Reece yelped, shaking his fingers before sticking them in his mouth. He looked at me, furious. What did you do to me? I smiled calmly. Oh, I just cast an enchantment on you. The moment you accepted that slip from my hand, it activated. He glared at me with pure hatred. You broke your word, Winters. You swore by the rivers 1 minute, and then broke it the next. Whatever you did to me, you are finished. I remained calm. No, I'm not. The envelope with your name on it, that's the one I referred to in my oath. Remember I said, the envelope that I have for Reece Aubrey? That one only contained the school board minutes, as promised. But that slip of paper with the enchantment runes, that was in the larger envelope with yours, and I never said anything about that. When I burned it, I made sure you couldn't reverse the spell. I sat down on the rock, grinning. Reece, how stupid do you think I am? Did you really believe I couldn't anticipate how you'd try to get around your oath? So I decided to keep you honest, in this matter at least, and give myself a little insurance. He stared at me, terrified. What does the enchantment do? Not much. It's essentially a sorcery cord linking us. Since it was forged under such binding oaths, it's going to be nearly impossible to cut. It's a triggered effect using that cord. If you ever try to harm me, directly or indirectly, that sorcery cord will transfer the fool's cap from my head to yours. If you mess with me in any way, you'll become the new designated victim for the rest of your life. You won't escape it by leaving town or graduating. Everyone will target you, and when you die, it'll pass to your oldest child. This cycle will continue until the final sifting of things. Reece looked like he might vomit. Don't worry, Reece, the cap isn't on your head, yet. All you have to do is stop messing with me. That shouldn't be too hard, right? I stood up to leave, but then stopped and said over my shoulder, leave the minutes in my locker by the end of school tomorrow. I need to return them to my mom's office before they're missed. It won't help you if they turn up missing, will it? Later that evening, I finished the last touches on Trey's history essay. It was a decent piece of work for a third grader. I stacked the papers neatly and slipped the enchanted paper between two of the sheets. The rune slip I'd given Reece had given me the idea. I went upstairs and knocked on Trey's door. He opened it, peering at me. Here's your homework, O Lord and Master. This is the last piece of work I'll be doing for you. Yeah, sure, he replied in that tone, implying I'd still be doing his homework for years to come. He took the papers from me, and as he went through them, the enchanted slip fell out. I felt the enchantment click into place. He closed the door in my face, shoving the slip into the hallway. I picked it up and immediately burned it with witch fire. The hex I'd cast on Reece had been more effective because he knew exactly what it was and how it worked. But the enchantment on Trey would work better if he didn't know about it. It was a subtle addition to an enchantment that all local coven members put on their children to prevent them from revealing the family's magical nature. If they try, intentionally or not, to spill the secret, the hex diverts their attention or distracts them. It doesn't harm them, and it doesn't bother them since they're unaware of it. I just added my second identity to the list of things the enchantment would prevent Trey from mentioning. Now, whenever he tries to rat me out about that, he'll simply get distracted. At lunch, I found a dead rat in my locker, sitting on top of an envelope. I tossed the rat in the trash and opened the envelope. While I was sure the rat was Reece's doing, after all, it couldn't harm me, I wasn't worried about him trying to counter-hex me. That would trigger the enchantment, and I had no doubt Reece knew that. What he really wanted was to mess with Coach Robbins, Miss Sorensen, and my mom. I pulled out the minutes and checked the back page. Sure enough, there were second staple holes. He'd unstapled the report, made some edits, and restapled it. I counted the pages, and there were 5 extra. This was better than if he'd taken something out. I grabbed my Xerox copy and compared the two. To his credit, he was crafty. Instead of clumping the new pages together, he'd inserted them into separate sections of the report. I unstapled it again, removed his little changes, and restapled it. Later, as I was about to head to my mom's office to return the report, I spotted Reece with his crew. He saw me and flashed a quick grin, thinking he was getting the last laugh. But the real joke would be on him when he tried to mess with Sorensen. I had a feeling it was Reece who had informed on me to Sorensen and lied about me starting that fight. He should have known better. Anything a witch does that starts with a lie usually ends badly. When he tries to manipulate Sorensen, she'll realize how badly she's been played. Reece, enjoy the show. Mr. Winters, what's that lock doing on your locker? Ms. Sorensen asked, pointing to the extra-large padlock I'd put there. Why does anyone put a lock on anything? To keep it safe. She gave me a cold, unimpressed look. Since my mom had stopped using that perfume at school board meetings, things had calmed down, but Miss Sorensen still made it a point not to be intimidated by the son of one of her superiors. Is there something in your locker that you think is in danger of being stolen? No, not really. But I'm tired of asking the custodian to cut off locks that I didn't put there. If I put this one on first, no one else can slap their own on it. Saves everyone time and effort. She wasn't buying it. Open it. Why? I have information that you have illegal substances in your locker. I don't do drugs, and I'm pretty sure my lock prevented anyone from planting oregano, but I did have my girly clothes in there. That could be worse than drugs. I hope you have a search warrant. I don't need one. The school is public property, and so is this locker. According to the Safe Schools policy, you need written permission to put a lock on it, and you don't have that. So, open it, Mr. Winters, or I'll have the custodian cut it off. Technically, the Safe Schools policy applied only in Michigan, not Massachusetts, but arguing that would just give Sorensen more ammunition against my mom. So I opened the locker and handed her my backpack. As she took it, I did a quick glamour, making her think my girly clothes were just gym clothes, funky-smelling gym clothes, at that. Doing a glamour like that on the fly is exhausting. She rummaged through my locker, finding nothing. Frustrated, she grabbed a bunch of comic books. I'm confiscating these. Why? You said you were searching for illegal substances. Since when are comic books illegal? Comic books aren't allowed in class. This isn't class. It's my locker. These are personal, private property. You can get them back at the end of the year. So, you're going to read them all by then? She sniffed imperiously and held out her hand. Hand over the lock. If combinations are good enough for everyone else, they should be good enough for you. I felt a sorcery cord linked to this. While sorcery isn't my strong suit, I can follow a cord back to its source. It led to Julia thinks her shit don't stink Dunaway, the school's queen bee. As I passed her and her entourage giggling, I knew it was time for her to pay. Julia, the one person who always seems to get away with everything, had been skating through life without consequences. If she ever left herself vulnerable, she would have been taken care of long ago. I got my lock back, swiping my comic books in the process. It wasn't until third period that I finally had the custodian cut off the lock someone else had placed on my locker to keep me from my stuff. Being the designated victim teaches you to think on your feet. Cole Peslow and his gang had decided that they weren't getting enough of a chance to mess with me, so they started hanging around after school, hoping to catch me off guard. To throw them off, I used a minor glamour on a member of the girls' soccer team to make them think they were following me. As I biked off, I heard loud screams from the locker room and saw the girls' coach rushing to save Cole and his gang from being pummeled. Another thing about being the designated victim, you don't have real friends. Sure, you still have the old friends, but if you're a true friend to them, you keep your distance for their own good. At least, that's what I tell myself. So, I've come to rely on Griff and his crew for companionship, even if I have to spell myself up as a girl to hang with them. Or maybe that's just another perk of the situation. Of course, that assumes I can actually find them when I need them. That afternoon, however, I had no luck. Maybe they were in detention or off at someone's house playing video games. There was no sign of Buck Washburn or his friends either, thank goodness. Maybe Griff and Buck had a falling out, or maybe they were just off doing their own thing. But hey, I was out from under the fool's cap for a few hours, and I was enjoying the day as a pretty girl on a beautiful spring afternoon. I walked down the streets of Old Town, window shopping, trying to recapture that light, carefree feeling from the first day. When I passed the comic book store, I decided to stop in, even though the new comics wouldn't be in for a few weeks. On a whim, I picked up one of the independent black and white comics. Ugh. I get the desire to break out of mainstream comics, but seriously, laying on the angst with a shovel doesn't make up for poor plotting, stilted dialogue, or bad art. I skimmed through to the end, where the hero stood amidst the wreckage of a city, surrounded by the dead and dying, mostly caused by his own actions, while delivering a self-pitying monologue that would have been too preachy even for the original Star Trek. I carefully placed the comic back on the shelf, making sure not to damage it, because Louis, the store owner, has a strict you break it, you buy it policy. Then I noticed a black girl around my age standing next to me, looking at the comic. She glanced at me and asked, "Any good?" I gave her a look of disgust and launched into my best Rex Reed critic impression, finishing with a thumbs down like Gene Siskel. Yuck! That bad? Someone once said, nobody ever went broke underestimating the taste of the American public. I hope these guys prove him wrong. Maybe. But this is issue number 7. Let's hope it never makes it to issue number 10. Curious, she reached for the comic and flipped through it. Her face contorted as she read, and she carefully placed it back on the shelf. I didn't believe it, but you were right, that sucked. We spent a few minutes joking about the comic, then moved on to other titles. We paused by the Archie comics. We exchanged a look. Guilty pleasure? She nodded, and we both grabbed a handful, hoping no one would notice. As we walked out of the store, we started chatting, just talking without any particular direction, something I had always wanted to do. Griff and I talk, but it's different with a girl. Her name was Jasmine, but I shortened it to Jazz, which she seemed to like. She loved Aegis, Lady Lightning, and Tigress, but thought Power Woman needed a complete overhaul, from the writing to the art to the central character. I was wondering if she might be into role-playing games. Hey, a girl can dream, right? When we reached the soda Fontainebleau. Suddenly, I was craving a frilly parfait, so I dragged Jazz in. Start with the strawberry frappe fantasy, I suggested. Why? She asked. What about the chocolate decadence overload? No, Glathhoppa. You must begin simply and work your way up to the chocolate decadence overload. If you start with the overload, you're just working backward to the simplicity of the frappe fantasy. Jazz laughed and bowed before my Zen wisdom. As we dug into our parfaits, I got a chance to take a good look at her. She was about my height, and I guess we were the same age, though obviously not the same school. I hoped she wasn't planning to enroll at Morrison anytime soon. That could cause some real problems. She wore her hair straightened and down her back, and had one of those diamond-shaped faces with great cheekbones and a pointy chin, features only a black girl can pull off. Her skin was a beautiful shade of bittersweet chocolate, flawless as ever. She had a long, straight nose and a broad mouth that expressed every emotion she was feeling. Her figure was nice for a 15-year-old, give it another year, and she was going to be a knockout. In this town, a girl like Jazz, looking as great as she does, isn't going to stay single for long. I just had to set her up with Trevor. He's a total sweetheart, prime boyfriend material, and honestly, he could use a break when it comes to the girlfriend department. I mean, how much can a guy handle being the fifth wheel? We chatted for a while. Honestly, I don't even remember what we talked about. It was just nice to connect. Then Griff, Lex, and Stu walked in. I waved them over, and we shifted around so Griff was sitting next to me, with Jazz between Lex and Stu on the other side of the booth. Hey, guys, this is Jazz. She's new around here, and I was making sure she didn't mix with riffraff, so don't get any ideas. I grinned to keep things light. I introduced everyone and snuggled up next to Griff, subtly making it clear that he was mine and off limits. Jazz didn't mind. She was getting plenty of guy attention with Lex and Stu by her side. I looked around. So, where's Trevor? Lex shrugged. No idea. He said he was working on some project and might be gone for a couple of weeks. Oh, great. A family heritage project? Double damn. Just then, Paris and Della walked in, and the party moved from the booth to a bigger table. At least I managed to get Lex to treat all the girls to frilly parfaits, so that was a win. The conversation shifted in all directions, so I stopped trying to set up Trevor and Jazz and just got lost in the chatter. As I finished my butterscotch Highland fling, Paris announced she was heading to the powder room and dragged me along with her. Once we were inside, we got down to the real talk. I'll spare you the details, but in short, Paris wasn't thrilled that I'd brought another girl into the mix, especially not a black girl who might pose competition for her with Lex. I explained that I had just met Jazz and was getting to know her, and then I casually mentioned I thought Trevor and Jazz would be a good match. Paris lightened up immediately. Not only did that take care of the awkward situation with a white girl between a black couple, but it also solved the ongoing problem of Trevor always tagging along. Jazz could be Lex's friend's girlfriend, and it would be weird for her to hit on Lex, or for him to do the same. Paris seemed to approve, and I was back in her good graces. She called Della and Jazz into the powder room and casually mentioned that her dad was letting her have a slumber party. Jazz raised an eyebrow. Slumber party? Is this going to be the hangout in our pajamas and make s'mores kind, or the get into nightgowns and tear the guys apart kind? Because if it's the first, I think I might wash my hair that night. Paris shook her head, laughing. Not to worry, I'll lock up my stuffed animal collection. This one's strictly for the grown-ups. And my mom promised she'd keep my dad out at a restaurant until at least 11. A slumber party. This could be tricky. What night is it? Friday. Okay, that's a possibility, but I had to play it carefully. I don't know. My parents have me on a pretty short leash these days. The vice principal's on my case. Not sure I can stay out all night. Paris gave me a pleading look. Please, Ethan. I really want you to come. I didn't think Paris was that fond of me. There's this girl from the other side of town who kinda invited herself and her friend, and I need a posse of my own there. I looked at Della, who nodded enthusiastically. Damn right. That girl is a real barracuda. You showed you've got guts at that last party. How could I say no to that? All right, but I can't stay all night. My mom will probably want me home by, I don't know, 10:30 or something. Paris bit her lip a little. Okay, we'll make sure everyone knows you're just stopping by. How about you, Jazz? Jazz raised an eyebrow. You want me at your slumber party? You barely know me. Hey, you know a better way to get to know someone than by doing their toenails? Plus, the more girls on Paris' side who weren't with this other girl, the better. I also had a feeling Paris wanted to make sure Jazz didn't try to steal her boyfriend. Yeah, Paris definitely plays the social game for keeps. Being the designated victim teaches you how to improvise. Cole Peslow and his gang were getting impatient because they didn't get to beat up on me enough, so they started staying after school, hoping to catch me. I used a minor glamour on a member of the girls' soccer team, making it seem like they were following me. As I pedaled off on my bike, I heard loud screams from the girls' locker room, and I saw the coach rush in to save Cole's group from being kicked to death. Another lesson of being the designated victim is realizing that you don't really have any true friends. You still have your old friends, but if you're truly their friend, you have to keep your distance for their own good. At least that's what I keep telling myself. That's why I rely so much on Griff and his group for company, even if I have to spell myself as a girl when I'm hanging out with them. Or is that another perk? Of course, that assumes I can even find them when I want to. I had no luck that afternoon. Maybe they were stuck in detention. I also didn't see Buck Washburn and his gang anywhere, which was a blessing. Maybe Griff and Buck had a falling out? Or maybe they were just at one of their houses playing video games. Who knows? But hey, I was out of the fool's cap for a few hours, and I was out as a pretty girl on a beautiful spring day. I wandered the streets of Old Town, checking out the shops, trying to recapture that light-hearted feeling I had on my first day. When I got to the comic book store, I decided to browse, even though the new comics wouldn't be in for a couple of weeks. On a whim, I grabbed one of the indie black and white comics. Ugh, I get the appeal of breaking out of mainstream comics, but seriously, laying on the angst this thick doesn't make up for bad plotting, stiff dialogue, and choppy art. I flipped through to the end. The hero stood in the wreckage of a city, surrounded by death and destruction, mostly caused by him, and gave this long, self-pitying speech that even Star Trek would have dumped. I put the comic back, careful not to damage it. Louis, the store owner, has a break it, you buy it policy, and I wasn't about to waste my money on that. Suddenly, I noticed a black girl about my age standing beside me. She looked at the comic, then nodded toward it. Any good? I curled my lip and did my best Rex Reed impression. I finished with a thumbs down like Gene Siskel. Yikes! That bad? Someone once said, nobody ever went broke underestimating the taste of the American public. I hope these guys prove him wrong. Maybe. But this is issue number 7. We can only hope it doesn't make it to issue number 10. Her curiosity piqued, she picked up the comic, flipped through it, grimaced, then carefully put it back. You were right. That sucked. We spent some time joking about the comic, then moved on to the other titles. We paused by the Archie comics and exchanged a look. Guilty pleasure? I asked. She nodded, and we each grabbed a handful, hoping nobody would notice. As we walked out of the store, we started chatting. I've always wanted to do that, talking nonstop, going everywhere and nowhere. I mean, Griff and I chat, but it's different when you're with a girl. Her name was Jasmine, or Jazz for short, which she seemed to like. She was really into Aegis, Lady Lightning, and Tigress, but thought Power Woman needed a complete overhaul, new writer, artist, inker, and maybe a new central character. I was wondering if she liked role-playing games. Hey, a girl can dream, when we reached the soda Fontainebleau. I heard one of those frilly parfait things calling me, so I dragged Jazz inside. Apparently, she'd never had one. You have to start with the strawberry frappé fantasy. Why? She asked. What about the chocolate decadence overload? No, Glafhoppa, you have to start simple, then work your way up to the chocolate decadence overload. If you start with the overload, you're just working backwards to the simplicity of the frappé fantasy. Jazz laughed and nodded, bowing to my wisdom. As we dug into our parfaits, I took a good look at her. She was about my height, and I bet we were in the same grade, though not the same school. I wondered if she might be enrolling soon at Morrishan. That could lead to some complications. I avoided asking which school she went to. She was a bit taller than me, with straightened hair that fell to the nape of her neck. She had that diamond-shaped face with cheekbones only black girls can pull off, and a pointy chin. Her skin was the color of bittersweet chocolate and flawless. She had a long nose and a wide mouth that made her feelings clear. She had a nice figure for a 15-year-old, wait till she grew into herself and she was going to be a knockout. Paris pretended to be embarrassed, and we got down to the real business of serious slumber partying. Along with Jazz, Paris, Della, and me, there were 3 other girls, Mindy, Rebecca, and Lindsay. So far, it was all good-natured fun. Jazz settled in, and I pulled Paris aside. "So, which one is the girl you're so worried about? She hasn't shown up yet." I just thought. "Oh, you're planning to gang up on her? Is she that bad? She's supposed to be some kind of barracuda with a chainsaw. So, what's she doing hanging around here?" "I'm not sure, but when she smiles at me, I get this feeling like a great white shark just swam into my pool." The party continued. I won't get into all the details, it's a slumber party, use your imagination. No, not the whips and chains, please. About an hour later, we heard the doorbell. Paris ran to answer it, and returned a few minutes later, followed by Julia God have mercy on us all Dunaway and her 2 loyal followers, Gail Edgerton and Rita Hewitt. Paris had mentioned that the Junior Achievement Bitch Queen had invited herself and a friend, but clearly, Julia had made a power play by bringing an extra uninvited guest. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Up until that point, the party had been nice and easygoing, but from then on, it had all the warmth of a meeting at Russ McLaughlin's round table. Julia swept in, and instantly started barking at Paris. Barking? Well, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's similar to what you'd hear on TV as trash talk. Only, it's more than that. It's called barking because it's like a dog growling at you, there's no logic, no sense, just a lot of angry noise. The goal is to keep you on the defensive, change the subject, or lie, while controlling what's said. Julia was trying to pull one of those sneaky bark and derail moves. The key to handling barking is to recognize it right away. Don't play into their mind games. Let them spew their nonsense until they slip up with something blatantly untrue, then jump on it. Stay calm, and get others to back you up. If you maintain control of what's true versus what's bogus, the barker usually backs off. I did just that, I'll spare you the details of Julia's nonsense. I got the other girls to back me up, well, not Gail or Rita, but that was expected, and completely derailed Julia's attack. Once she was quieted down, Paris managed to regain control of the party. The next few hours went back to the usual slumber party vibes. When it got dark and we were sure Paris' parents were out of the house, the real fun began. We started gossiping, and I made sure everyone said nice things about Trevor, for Jazz's sake. Julia claimed she and Griff had once been an item, but I doubt it. And even if they were, everyone's allowed one mistake. As the talk shifted from guys to spooky stories, most of the tales were pretty tame and generic, things like the phantom hitchhiker, the desperate phone call, and the escaped killer with the claw. You know the drill, all pretty lame. Among my own crowd, we tell stories that would have these girls sleeping with the lights on for weeks. Then Julia got involved. She leaned forward, letting the single candlelight cast eerie shadows on her face, and said in a hushed voice, "You know, a murder happened in this very house, don't you?" She launched into a generic ghost story, ending with the heroine being walled up under the floorboards. She concluded, and they say, on some nights, if you listen closely, you can hear her scraping at the floorboards, trying to escape. That was just downright cruel. Paris had lived in this house for years and never heard anything like that, but now, sooner or later, she'd start hearing the creaking of the wood and imagining that ghost scraping away. And I knew for a fact there'd never been a murder in this house. The story was just a fabrication, presuming this was the home of some rich family when it was really the old groundskeeper's house on the Durward estate. Julia's sole love affair at Dunaway was just trying to mess with Paris. But Julia wasn't done yet. Why don't we do something to help the poor soul? Like what? Paris scoffed. Send donations to Amnesty International? Even if she ever existed, she lived over 100 years ago. What's there to do? Apparently, this was exactly what Julia wanted to hear. We can help set her spirit free. With that, Gail and Rita pulled out their stash, a red candle shaped like a woman, a black candle shaped like a man, a little fake incense burner, a sharp-looking letter opener, colored chalks, a bag of dried herbs, and a well-worn paperback book on witchcraft. As Julia started insisting that the book was the real deal and that she'd actually used it for real witchcraft, I could barely contain my laughter. This was priceless. Little Miss Bitch Queen was trying to set herself up as some witch queen. Oh, the gods had practically wrapped her up for me with a big blue bow. I couldn't resist, this was too good to pass up. According to the rules of revenge, they have to set themselves up first, and Julia had done it so perfectly. Refusing would be an insult to the gods themselves. As the three witches began their ritual, I quietly took my chance in the shadows. While they were all focused on their makeshift preparations, I made my way over to Paris' dresser. After a quick search, I found what I needed, a white gauzy scarf, a black ribbon, and a Barbie doll. Julia, Gail, and Rita chanted something over the incense burner as I hid behind Lindsay, out of sight. I wrapped the Barbie in the white scarf, tied the black ribbon around its neck, and created an illusion using the glamour stored in my locket. As the ritual reached its dramatic climax, I sent the illusion into the smoke of the incense burner. "Come forth!" Julia cried out, and the phantasm materialized. One thing about glamour is that it's very subjective. It absorbs the thoughts and emotions of everyone around it, shaping itself from their imaginations. The phantasm started as a blurry, vague female form. As the girls' fears and fantasies filled it, it morphed into an unsettling blend of their ideas of a trapped ghost. The room fell eerily silent, only the sound of our collective breaths breaking the stillness. Once I thought Julia was sufficiently rattled, I directed the phantasm toward her. It reached out, but just before its skeletal fingers could graze her cheek, it turned and moved straight toward Paris. Paris screamed, and I tried to redirect the phantasm, but it wouldn't respond. Paris backed into a corner, visibly frightened, and the phantasm followed her. I dropped the Barbie, kicking it under Paris' bed, and grabbed the salt shaker. I aimed 3 sprays of salt at the illusion, chanting, "Begone! Begone! Begone!" With the 3rd spray, the phantasm vanished in a puff. As the room lights flickered back on, Jazz hit the overhead light switch. Couldn't she have done that a few seconds earlier? Della rushed to comfort Paris, who was still shaken. Julia, in a quiet voice, asked, "What just happened?" This was my cue. I snapped at Julia, "Oh, very nice. You come in here, pull this little stunt, and now you're acting all innocent? Are you really trying to make us believe you didn't plan this from the start? Prank?" Paris, now realizing she'd been duped, stared at Julia. "You mean that was a practical joke?" Julia was completely caught off guard for once. She tried to defend herself, but Paris wasn't having any of it. Paris could handle vicious pranks, but not creepy ghost stories, and definitely not manipulative girls trying to cause trouble. With the rest of us backing her up, we made sure Julia and her crew left. Once the 3 of them were gone, the mood relaxed and we returned to slumber party mode. The next game was figuring out how Julia had pulled off her stunt. I stayed quiet while Rebecca, God bless her, suggested mass hypnosis. And why not? It's behind most seances and similar events. By the time we got ready for bed, the power of suggestion had most of the girls believing they were the ones who had thrown the salt and broken the spell. But I fell asleep trying to figure out what went wrong with the phantasm. One benefit of being a witch is that you don't need an alarm clock. I made sure I was up first, so I could use the bathroom alone. I needed it, since the girl glamour had dropped while I slept. Talk about rough morning. Come Monday at school, I noticed the Dunaway group acting strange. They were huddled together, whispering. There was none of the usual snarky giggling that meant they were gossiping about someone. I found out what was going on from an unexpected source. I was in the boys' room when Reece Aubrey approached me. Surprised, I checked to make sure no one else was around. No one was there, which was probably why he risked talking to me. I raised an eyebrow. "What's up?" He gave me a quick look. "I found out what Julia and her crew have been up to today. They got a book on witchcraft." He smirked. "They've been reading it all day, trying to figure out what to do next." Through my sources, he gave a small cough, referring to his eavesdropping spell. I found out Julia was at a slumber party at the Durward estate. "You hang out with that crowd, right? Any idea what happened?" I wanted to tell him to mind his own business, but I held back. It's bad karma to kick someone when they're down, and he'd probably keep digging until he found something. Well, Julia and her crew showed up and tried to play some nasty games. First, she told a ghost story, and then they tried to summon the ghost. Something did appear, and it scared the hell out of everyone. Reece gave me an expectant look. "And you had a hand in what showed up?" I shot him a cold look. Whatever showed up went straight for Paris and nearly gave her a panic attack. I don't do that to my friends. I added a pointed look at Reece, who's been known to pull pranks on his closest friends. Reece frowned. "So what was it?" I shrugged. "I'm still trying to figure it out. No one else from the families was there." He chuckled. "Maybe they were in disguise?" "Ha, very funny. Any chance any of these mundanes might have the talent?" I waved my hand dismissively. "Please, I've heard boy bands with more talent than what was there that night." Then a thought crossed my mind. "Reece, don't go asking anyone else from the families. Keep them out of it. If the bitch pack wants to play at witchcraft, let them. Bad things happen to those who don't respect the craft." Reece grinned. "Oh, yes. But why should you have all the fun? First, I'm already in this mess. Second, that bitch Dunaway is the one who cursed me with the fool's cap. I have first dibs on revenge. Or do you claim a better right?" Reece shook his head. While he'd definitely gotten his fair share of Julia's antics, nothing like what she'd done to me. Still, I decided to give him a bone. "Okay, I'll share the fun. Once I figure out my plan, I'll probably need your help." He grinned like a wolf. "But, Reece, when it goes down, I'm the one holding the axe." Reece gave a savage nod. "Fine by me. As long as she gets what's coming to her." He didn't care either way. He'd either get in on pranking Julia or sit back and watch me screw things up. Either way, it was all amusement for him.